Good morning. This is kind of new to me. I'm excited about videoing this lesson for you today. It's very unfortunate that we cannot be together today. I'm going to miss that, and I'm going to miss playing laser tag because I really like to play. I really love being with you guys, and I'm really going to miss that. I've had a lot of wonderful experiences over the last week, and I wanted to share a few of those with you because they kind of go along with our lesson. This lesson will be in a couple of parts. And the one thing that I got to experience was going to see the ark, to see the massive amount of work that God chose Noah to do. And as I was looking at that ark, I thought about how much he must have been challenged, how much that he must have been ridiculed probably as he was trying to do that, and as he accomplished that, and how God must have gave him strength to see through what his plan was going to be. So he had a man that he knew that could accomplish that. And so he was challenged many times, no doubt, and shaken, but he always remained faithful. Another thing that I got to experience this week was Melissa and I, as part of celebrating our anniversary for 34 years, we went and seen the movie I Still Believe. A very good movie about Jeremy Camp and how he lost his first wife to cancer, and how that his faith remained strong. That's what I want to talk about, because there's a story in the Bible about a man whose faith was sifted. Satan desired to sift him like wheat. And I don't know if you know what a sift is. When I think of a sift, I think about this. This belonged to my mother-in-law, and I remember my grandmother had one of these, and they made homemade biscuits for their family every day. And a part of making those homemade biscuits was taking the flour, putting it in here, and they would wind this wheel, and they would sift the wheat. And the result of that would be that what they made wouldn't have hard lumps in it, because once it was sifted, all of the light flour, all of that did not have anything bad in it, any hard spots, everything else would fall out of here. So my question for us today is whenever we're shaken, or whenever we're sifted, and that's not a matter of when it happens or if it happens, it's going to happen. Okay, so there's going to be times in our lives when we face challenges. There's going to be times in our lives when things don't work out the way we want them to, and our faith's going to be shaken. And a lot of times what happens when our faith gets shaken, we're like this character that we're going to look at in the Bible today. Sometimes bad things can come out. And the thing that I want to challenge us to do is not to be like Peter. All right, we look at people like Peter, and Peter was a wonderful disciple after this event when he was filled with the Spirit, and in the book of Acts he came out just a great disciple of Christ. He endured jail, he endured a lot of things, and was even crucified for being faithful. Okay, so we don't want to necessarily follow Peter's example whenever he was faced with temptation, but what we do want is the result that Peter got whenever he was sifted, and where it made him put his focus, and what kind of man it made him. So my question to you is, when your faith is shaken and your faith is sifted, what's the end result of that? What's going to be the end result? What has been the end result? And what do you want that to be? So what had happened with the disciples is Jesus was nearing that time where he was going to go to the cross. All of them had been together in the upper room, and there they were at the Last Supper, and Jesus looks around and he said, you know what, one of you guys are going to betray me. All of a sudden the disciples' attention turned inward to themselves. They did not turn that attention toward Christ, and they turned it toward maybe looking at everybody else and saying, hey, it's not me, is it you? Just like we do many times. We always want to point the other finger. And that was going on among the disciples. The Bible tells us that there was a little disagreement between them as to who was going to be the greatest. So their focus was not on where it needed to be. Their focus was inward. Okay, so whatever happens in our lives, who should always shake out as being number one? Jesus should. So I want to look at a scripture here. I'm just going to cut to the chase. In Luke chapter 22, verse 31, Jesus looks at Simon Peter, and Simon has promised to follow him to the death. Man, he's really gave the impression that he was going to be strong no matter what. But then Jesus looks at him, and he says, Simon, Simon. You know, I can't imagine. I remember my parents on a few occasions looking at me and saying, Tony, Tony. You know, and I kind of picture that going on with Jesus and Peter. Peter, Peter. Simon, Simon. Listen to what he says in chapter Luke 22, verse 31. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. So all of them would be sifted. All 12 of them. And what we find is they just scattered everywhere. They were so accustomed to being in a comfortable place with Jesus that when that place become uncomfortable, they scattered and ran. I hope that whenever we're faced with circumstances in our lives, that can be many different things. It can be bad news. It can be a coronavirus. We see many people that, even though we've not seen it real close to us, around the world people are faced with that challenge. And also people are sometimes faced with the challenge of sickness. Sometimes it can be being bullied. Sometimes it can be unfortunate circumstances. Maybe we don't make the team. Maybe we lose the tournament. There's so many things when our faith gets shaken. And what we find is, here's what you will always find when your faith is shaken. What you love the most is what you're going to cling to the most. How much should we love Jesus? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your paths. That's in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. It's a great verse, and it holds true. What we love the most is what we're going to hold on to the most. So what happened to Peter? You would really think by what he said that he really loved Jesus. But that wasn't the case. His love waned when it come time for a challenge. There's a few reasons why sometimes that we're sifted. The enemy's plan is for you, as the same as it was for Peter, to shake the faith out of you. To shake the faith out of you. Think about that. Jesus allowed for better intentions. He wanted to shake everything that didn't need to be in Peter out of Peter. And that's exactly what happened. Sometimes God knows we're being shaken. And he allows us to be shaken so that we see the insignificant things and get life down to the things that are most important. Now, I want us to think about reasons why we shake things. One reason we shake things is to get them closer down to their foundation. All right? We find out when things are shaken what's under them. You take a beautiful tree. If the soil under it is ruined, then guess what happens to its leaves and all of its beauty? If it doesn't have a great foundation, if it's not rooted in the right thing, it dies. Not only that, but we also find, based on what we're founded on, what our fruit's like. You know, whenever I was a young man, I used to pick dogwood berries for money. We would take them to the local nurseries up in Warren County, and the way we picked those is by taking a sheet and put it under the tree, and we would shake the tree, and when we did, the ripe fruit would be what the product would be. All of the ripe dogwood berries that would produce other dogwood trees would fall from the tree. Why? Because they had become to maturity. Now look, that can be the same in our lives. When we're shaken, what should come forth? Our fruit. That is where our fruit really shows through. So I want us to think about that. What is your foundation? What is it like? What is it founded on? And when life shakes out, where will you stand? I hope that you have a wonderful week. This is part 1 of another part of this Bible study that we will do called Shaken. Thank you, and God bless.